The abandoned giant. The ship was older than memory. It drifted in the silent dockyards of the outer rim, covered in rust and scars of battles long forgotten. The galaxy had once called it a warship, a titan of steel, but now it was nothing more than a grave. Aliens passed by and laughed at it, calling it cursed, calling it broken, calling it dead. No crew walked its corridors, no captain sat in its chair. Only dust and silence ruled inside. For years, the great starship had been abandoned. It stood like a skeleton of metal, its frame cracked, its systems cold. The world had moved on. Fleets had grown stronger, ships had become faster, and technology had changed, but this giant was left behind. Forgotten, it was a symbol of failure, of wasted dreams. None wished to touch it. None wished to risk their time on it, but then came a human. He was not a famous general, not a powerful leader, not even a respected engineer. He was only a mechanic. A man with calloused hands, sharp eyes, and a mind that saw things differently. His name was not known across the stars, and yet fate guided him to this forgotten grave of steel. When he stepped into the dockyard, the aliens who worked there stared at him. They whispered that he was wasting his life. Why would a human fix that wreck? One sneered. Even scavengers reject it, another laughed. But the mechanic did not answer them. He simply walked closer, his boots echoing on the metal floor, his eyes fixed on the shadow of the giant, and in that silence he smiled. The ship was broken, yes, but he saw more. He saw a heart that still beat. Though faint, he saw engines that slept, not engines that died. He saw weapons that could roar again if only someone cared to hear them. Where others saw rust, he saw strength hidden beneath the scars. Where others saw failure, he saw a promise. The mechanic stepped inside the giant. The air was stale, the corridors were cold. The walls cracked with age. Every step echoed like walking in a tomb, but he felt no fear. He placed his hand on the wall and whispered, "You are not dead. You are waiting." In the dark chamber of the engine core, he opened a panel. The circuits were burned. Wires were twisted. Dust clung like cobwebs. No sane engineer would waste their time here. Yet the human began to work. With patience, with care, with steady hands. One wire after another, one bolt after another. Slowly he cleaned, slowly he repaired, and with every spark that flickered he felt the ship stir. Days passed, and the aliens mocked him more. Look at the human. Fixing a corpse, they laughed. Even a junk trader would not touch that. But the mechanic never answered. He worked in silence. He slept on the cold floors, ate little food, and spent his hours inside the belly of the giant. Something was calling to him. Something only he could hear. The ship was whispering, and he was listening one night. After countless hours, something happened. He connected a line of power, and for the first time in centuries, a single light flickered on. A faint glow filled the chamber. Trembling like a heartbeat, the mechanic stepped back. His chest rising with heavy breath, he whispered softly, "You are alive." The aliens who saw it were stunned. They stared at the single light with wide eyes. "Impossible," one muttered. "No machine can return from that," another said. But the human only smiled again, because he knew this was only the beginning. The giant was no longer silent. It had been abandoned, mocked and cursed. But now, under the hands of a human, it began to stir, and deep in its heart, systems that had slept for ages felt the touch of life again. Engines groaned faintly, power lines hummed, and echoes of war long forgotten stirred in the dark. The mechanic stood in the silence, his eyes burning with determination. The galaxy had rejected this ship, called it worthless, but he would prove them wrong. He would awaken the giant piece by piece, bolt by bolt, and when the galaxy finally saw what he had created, it would no longer laugh, it would tremble. The story of the abandoned giant was just beginning, and humanity was about to show the stars what true vision meant. The hidden potential. The whispers spread through the dockyards like fire. The old warship that was called Dead now had a light burning inside it. One human had done in days what whole guilds of alien engineers had refused to even attempt. The aliens did not believe. They said it was a trick. They said it was madness. But still they watched. Because curiosity is stronger than scorn. The human mechanic walked the broken corridors with a lantern in his hand. His steps echoed on the steel, each sound like a heartbeat. He studied every crack, every wire, every shattered panel. To him the ship was not dead, it was only sleeping. He whispered again and again as he worked, "You are not broken. You are waiting. The ship seemed to answer. When he repaired the smallest circuit, sparks danced like fireflies when he touched the walls. Faint hums echoed deep inside. It was as if the vessel recognized him, as if it had been waiting for this single soul. Others had tried before, but none had cared. None had listened. This human did not see a relic. He saw hidden strength. He remembered his days on Earth. As a child, he had walked through the scrapyards of ruined cities where others saw trash. He saw puzzles. He built toys from wires, machines from discarded shells. And when people laughed at him, he kept building. He learned one truth in those years. Every broken thing still carried life if one knew how to awaken it. In the engine core, he pulled open a panel larger than himself. Inside were coils of alien design, wires that pulsed with faint memory. They were strange to him, unlike Earth machines, but he studied them with sharp eyes slowly. He began to merge his tools with the alien craft, human logic mixing with alien craftwork. Piece by piece, the two became one. It was not only repair, it was rebirth. The aliens in the dockyard grew restless. They saw more lights flicker to life in the giant's body. They saw its systems hum faintly in the night. Impossible, they whispered. This ship was cursed. How can it breathe again? But none dared stop him. Something about the human's quiet determination unsettled them. It was not power, it was not arrogance, it was faith. And faith can move mountains. One evening as he worked, the ship trembled under his hand. He had reconnected a forgotten coil to a power relay. The floor shook, dust rained from the ceiling. A deep groan filled the chamber like the growl of a waking beast. The mechanic fell back, his chest rising with awe. Slowly, the engines gave a single rumble. Not a roar, not yet, but enough to shake the dockyard walls. Aliens rushed to the windows, wide-eyed. They had laughed at him yesterday, but now fear filled their faces. The human rose, wiping grease from his hands. He whispered again to the ship, "Good. You are listening now." But not all were amused in the far reaches of the station. Whispers traveled to powerful ears. The broken ship was stirring. The cursed warship was moving again. Commanders of alien fleets spoke in hushed tones. "This cannot be allowed," one said. "If the human revives it, balance will be broken," another warned. The galaxy had left this giant to rust for a reason. If it returned, it could shake the stars. Still, the mechanic worked, unaware of the shadows watching him. Every night he connected more circuits, polished more panels, breathed life into more systems. The ship responded slowly but surely, like a beast healing from old wounds. And with every light that flickered on, the bond between man and machine grew stronger. The mechanic began to feel it in his bones. The ship was not only metal, it was alive in a way he could not explain. It was waiting for him, only him. In the silence of the engine room, he spoke aloud. "Others may not see you, but I see you." And the ship answered with a soft pulse of light. As if it understood, the aliens now stopped mocking. They watched from a distance, whispering among themselves. Some called the human foolish, but their voices trembled. Others said he was dangerous, that he was waking something that should remain dead. But none could deny the truth. The ship was stirring, and it was because of him. The galaxy had no idea what was being born in that forgotten dockyard. But the mechanic knew. He had seen it in the ship's eyes, though the ship had none. He had felt it in its heartbeat. Though the ship had no heart, he was not simply repairing metal. He was uncovering hidden potential. Potential the galaxy had buried. Potential that could change everything. And as he lay down on the cold steel floor that night, resting for a moment, the ship hummed faintly in the darkness. Almost like a lullaby, the giant was not abandoned anymore. It had chosen its companion. It had chosen humanity. The rising power. The dockyard had never known silence like this. Every worker, every alien engineer, every passerby now paused when they heard the faint hum that came from the giant. The warship, once mocked as a corpse, was slowly breathing again, and at the center of it all stood the human mechanic. His hands black with grease, his eyes burning with focus. Each day he pulled life from death. Each night the ship grew stronger. Panels that had been dark for centuries glowed with blue light. Engines that had once been frozen rumbled like thunder trapped inside steel. It was no longer the abandoned hulk that the galaxy had laughed at. It was becoming something else, something reborn. But with every step forward came resistance. Dockyard overseers sent warnings. "You waste your time, human." The ship will kill you, they said. Leave it. Before you bring a curse upon us all, others whispered. Yet the mechanic did not stop. He answered only with silence. His faith was not in words, but in the sound of the giant awakening. He crawled into tunnels filled with dust and shadow. He worked with tools that sparked against ancient circuits. Sometimes the ship screamed, its alarms crying like ghosts. Sometimes it fell silent again as if testing his resolve. But every time the human continued. His hands bled, his body ached, but his spirit did not bend. And the ship began to respond in ways no one expected. When he approached the control deck, the doors opened on their own, though no power should have flowed there. When he touched the helm, the cracked glass flickered, showing faint star maps when he stood in silence. He felt vibrations under his feet. Like a pulse, it was as if the ship knew him, trusted him, chose him. No alien had ever been welcomed inside, but the human was different. The whispers spread beyond the dockyard now. Merchants carried the news to other stations. Pirates overheard and laughed. An old ship reborn. By human hands, they scoffed. But their laughter held unease. Even they knew the legend of this warship. They knew the battles it had once fought, and if it rose again, their empires of crime could be shattered one night. The mechanic stood alone in the engine bay. He had reconnected the final coils of power. His heart beat fast, his hands trembled slowly. He pressed the switch. At first, nothing, then, with a roar that shook the heavens, the engines came alive. The sound rolled through the dockyard like a storm. The entire station trembled, lights flickered, alarms rang. Aliens fell to the ground in shock. The forgotten giant had spoken, and its voice was thunder. The mechanic gripped the railing as the power surged through the vessel. The glow spread across the hull, each panel shining with fire. The once dead ship now burned like a star. He whispered with a smile. Yes, you are alive, from the control deck. He saw the lights of the galaxy beyond the viewport. The stars seemed closer, sharper, as if the ship's eyes had opened once more. It was not just a vessel now. It was a weapon waiting to breathe fire, and only he held its heart. But power brings attention. Far away, commanders of alien fleets saw the reports. They stared at images of the ship glowing in the void. This cannot be allowed, one growled. If the human truly awakens it, no empire will be safe, another warned. Orders were whispered, plans drawn. The galaxy that had abandoned the ship was now preparing to face it again. Yet the mechanic did not fear. He walked the halls of the giant and felt its strength rising. Every hum of its engines echoed in his chest. Every spark of its weapon systems felt like a promise. The galaxy saw a relic, but he saw destiny. The aliens who once mocked him now watched in silence. They dared not laugh, dared not speak. For before their eyes, a myth was becoming real. The ship was not only returning, it was changing. Human hands had shaped it into something new, something greater than before. And when the engines roared again, shaking the void, the mechanic stood tall and whispered, They thought you were broken, but we will show them what it means to rise. The galaxy would remember this moment. The day a rusting corpse became a rising power, and the day humanity revealed its gift. To see strength where others saw only weakness. To awaken giants from their graves, to turn rust into fire. The giant was no longer abandoned, it was reborn. The galaxy begins to notice. The roar of the engines had not only shaken the dockyard, it had carried across the stars. Through trade routes, through pirate dens, through military channels everywhere, whispers began to grow. The cursed warship was alive, and a human had awakened it. At first no one believed. The old ship had been dead for centuries, rusting and forgotten. But then came images, shaky recordings from terrified dockyard workers, the hull glowing, the engines burning like suns, the sound of thunder as the station shook under its power. No lie could explain that. The galaxy was forced to listen. In the halls of alien empires, rulers frowned in unease. They remembered the history of that ship. It was no ordinary vessel. It had once stood against entire fleets. It had been designed as a weapon of balance, a sword meant to cut through armadas. When it fell silent, they had called it cursed. They had buried its name, but if it returned, everything would change. The mechanic did not care for whispers. He lived inside the steel body of the giant. Every day he worked, every night he listened. The ship hummed to him now, not faint but strong. It was alive in a way machines should not be. It was growing louder, more eager, as if it longed to stretch its wings and roar into battle. When he walked into the control deck, the cracked glass flickered with star maps again. This time the images were clear, systems lighting up across the galaxy. Weapons once locked now glowed on the panels. The ship was showing him what it could do, and he understood this was not just a machine. This was destiny forged in steel. But the dockyard overseers grew afraid. "This is madness," one said. "If the fleets discover what you have done, they will burn this station," another warned. They begged him to stop, to shut it down before it was too late. But the mechanic's eyes were steady. They abandoned it, they mocked it, they feared it. "But I will finish it," he said. His voice carried no anger, only truth, and that truth silenced them. Beyond the dockyard, enemies began to stir. Pirate captains held secret councils. "This ship will hunt us if it rises," they growled. "We should strike now, before it takes flight." Warlords in distant systems whispered of danger. Generals planned silent moves. The human had become a threat to all, not because of who he was, but because of what he had awakened. Still, he worked without fear. Every panel he restored brought the ship closer to life. Every system he touched whispered back in gratitude, and deep in its heart, weapons long sealed stretched like beasts waking from slumber. The mechanic stood among them. Grease on his face, sweat in his eyes, he whispered like a prayer. Soon, the aliens who had once laughed at him now kept their distance. Some feared to even speak. Others came at night to watch silently, in awe. They could not explain why this human was succeeding where thousands had failed, but deep inside they felt the truth. Humans saw hope where others saw ruin. And that hope was dangerous. One night, the mechanic stood on the hull looking out at the stars. The ship's body glowed beneath his feet, faint but alive. He thought of Earth, of the scrapyards where he first learned to build, and he smiled no matter how far he had come. His gift was the same, to bring life where others saw only death, to find power in forgotten places, but shadows were closing in. A signal was sent across the void. An alien fleet began to move, quiet and hidden. Their orders were simple. Destroy the ship before it fully awakens. Kill the human if he stands in the way. Erase this legend before it spreads too far. The mechanic did not yet know of the danger. He only felt the ship's hum growing stronger. Like a beast testing its chains, he tightened a bolt, wiped his hands, and whispered again, "They will see you, and they will fear you." The galaxy had noticed. The galaxy had begun to whisper, and soon the galaxy would tremble, for the giant was no longer a memory. It was becoming a storm, and storms do not stay silent for long, and the stars would soon tremble. First test of fire, the whispers had turned into fear. Across the dockyard, no one laughed anymore. They watched the human walk the halls of the ship, his shadow framed by glowing panels. They saw the rusted titan awaken more each day, its hum now louder than their own hearts. But fear breeds danger, and danger soon arrived. The pirates came first, a swarm of jagged ships, painted with blood and fire. They had heard the stories of the humans' work. They had laughed at first, but deep inside they trembled. If the warship returned, their empires would shatter, so they chose to strike early, destroy it before it could rise. The station alarms wailed in the night. Dozens of pirate vessels appeared from the void, circling like wolves. Their captains hailed the dockyard with cruel voices. "Give us the human, give us the ship, and we will spare you," they snarled. But everyone was silent. No one dared betray the mechanic, for in their hearts, even the fearful ones had begun to hope. The mechanic was deep in the control deck when the lights of danger flashed. Red alarms lit up the panels, the ship itself warning him. He looked out at the swarm of predators beyond the glass, and his jaw tightened. "It is too soon," he whispered. "You are not ready." But the ship answered with a pulse of light through the deck. The helm glowed under his hands. The controls flickered alive. The ship was not afraid. It wanted to fight with trembling hands. The mechanic activated the engines. The dockyard shook. Dust rained from the ceiling outside. The pirates watched in disbelief as the rusted hulk moved. Slowly, painfully, like a beast learning to walk again, they laughed. But their laughter cracked with fear. The first wave of pirate fire struck. Missiles slammed against the giant's hull. Explosions rippled across its body. The dockyard workers screamed, but the mechanic held the helm steady. The shields flickered, weak, broken, but alive. For the first time in centuries, the giant had raised its guard. "Good," the mechanic whispered. "Now show them what you remember." The ship's cannons hummed, long silent weapons sparking awake. The panels lit with warning signs, systems still unstable. But the mechanic pressed forward. He trusted the giant, he trusted the bond they shared. With a sound like the sky breaking apart, the first cannon fired. A beam of white fire tore through the void. One pirate vessel vanished in an instant. Shattered into sparks, the dockyard shook with the blast. The workers fell silent in awe. The humans smiled for the first time in days. The ship roared and the pirates trembled. But the battle was not yet won. The swarm closed in, unleashing wave after wave of fire. Panels cracked, sparks showered the mechanic. The engine screamed in pain, yet the ship fought back. Every time it was struck, it struck harder. Every wound only fueled its rage. The mechanic shouted commands, his voice mixing with the alarms. The ship answered him like a partner. When he turned the helm, the engines obeyed. When he willed the cannons to fire, they roared. It was no longer a broken relic. It was alive, it was hungry. The pirates grew desperate. They had come to destroy. But now they were being hunted. Their fleet scattered. Their captains cursed in fear. "This is impossible," they cried. But the human did not listen. He and the giant had only one thought: survive. The battle raged like fire in the night. Explosions painted the void. The dockyard lit with colors of war. And when the dust settled, silence returned. The pirates were gone, their ships broken, their bodies scattered among the stars. And the giant stood, battered but alive, its hull scarred, its systems bleeding sparks. But its engines still roared, its cannon still glowed. The mechanic slumped against the helm, sweat dripping from his brow. He whispered into the silence. "You did it," the ship answered with a hum, deep and proud. Together they had passed the first test of fire. The dockyard workers stepped forward slowly. No one mocked now, no one doubted. They bowed their heads to the human, for they had seen what he had created. The galaxy's deadliest weapon was no longer a myth. It was real, and it was only just beginning. Far away, the whispers grew into panic. Pirates, warlords, and empires all heard the news. The cursed warship had fought again, and it had won, and the galaxy knew one truth. Where humans walked, even rusted giants could rise from their graves. The weapon revealed. The battle with the pirates was only the beginning. Though the ship stood scarred and smoking, its engines still glowed, its cannons still hummed. The dockyard had shaken with fire, yet the giant had not fallen. And now, the galaxy's whispers grew into shouts. Across distant worlds, leaders sat in silent fear. The cursed warship had not only awakened, it had destroyed an entire pirate fleet. And it had done so under the hands of one human. A mechanic, not a soldier, not a commander. This was a truth they could not understand, but they feared it all the same. In the dark halls of the ship, the mechanic walked alone. The battle had tested the giant. But he knew it was only the start. Systems still hid secrets. Weapons still slept in silence, and the ship itself seemed eager. Humming louder with every hour. It wanted to show him more. It wanted to reveal its true self, deep inside the core. He found panels he had never touched. Layers of security written in alien code. No mechanic should have been able to unlock them. But when he placed his hand upon the console, the ship responded. Lights flared, locks opened. Codes bent like paper as if the vessel had chosen him alone. The hidden systems came alive. Weapons that had been sealed for centuries began to stir. He stepped back as the walls lit with fire. Massive cannons hidden within the ship's body slid into view. Their glow painted the chamber in crimson light. The hum of their power shook the air. The mechanic whispered with awe, "So this is who you really are?" The dockyard workers trembled when they saw it. Weapons larger than cities, cannons that could split fleets, shields that shimmered like storms across the hull. The ship was no longer a relic. It was a god of war, and humanity had awakened it. But the revelation did not stay hidden. Far away, warlords saw the reports. Armies whispered of fear. The empires that had buried the warship's name now screamed in panic. If this vessel rises fully, no fleet will match it, their generals warned. The galaxy prepared for war. The mechanic sat in the captain's chair for the first time. His hands rested on the helm. The panels lit with maps, with stars, with targets. The ship showed him visions of battles yet to come. He felt its will pressing into his own. Not a voice, not words, but something stronger. It wanted to fight, it wanted to rise. And it wanted him to lead. Outside, scouts tested their courage. Small fleets approached the dockyard, watching, waiting. But when the ship turned its cannons toward them, They fled without firing. The sight alone was enough. No one wished to face the beast that had returned. The mechanic smiled for the first time in weeks. He had bled for this, worked for this, believed in this. Now the galaxy would see what he saw. The potential hidden in the rust, the power buried beneath the scars, the truth that only humanity had the courage to uncover. The dockyard overseers came to him trembling. "You must leave, human," they begged. "The fleets are coming. They will destroy us all." But the mechanic's voice was calm. "I will not run," he said. "You may hide. But this ship and I, we will stand." The workers did not understand. But they bowed their heads, for deep in their hearts, they knew something greater than fear was awakening before them. The galaxy had armies, the galaxy had fleets. But humanity had vision, and vision can turn ruins into legends. The ship rumbled again, louder than thunder. Its hidden weapons roared as if eager to fire. Energy pulsed through every panel. The stars outside shimmered as the shields flared to life. The giant was no longer a secret, it was a storm. And storms cannot be stopped far away. Entire armadas prepared to march. Their goal was simple. Erase the warship, erase the human, bury the legend before it could spread. But the mechanic only smiled as he felt the ship's hum beneath his feet. "They are coming," he whispered. "Good. Let them." The weapon was revealed, and soon the galaxy would learn the cost of underestimating humanity. The final awakening, the galaxy moved like a storm. Armadas gathered, fleets stretched across the stars, their weapons glowing, their orders clear. Destroy the ship, destroy the human, erase the threat before it could grow. No empire, no warlord, no pirate wished to see the cursed warship rise again. The dockyard shook with fear. Workers fled into the shadows. Ships left the station in haste, but the human mechanic did not run. He stood on the control deck, hands steady on the helm. The giant hummed beneath his feet, louder than ever before. It was ready, it was waiting from the viewport. He saw them arrive, a sea of ships, a storm of firepower. Their formation stretched across the void like an iron wall. Tens of thousands of cannons aimed at him. The voices of commanders echoed across comms. "Surrender, human, or be erased," but the mechanic did not speak. He placed his hand on the helm and the ship answered with a deep roar. Engines blazed like suns. Shields flared like storms. Cannons locked into place, glowing with power. The warship was no longer a relic, no longer rust and scars. It was alive, awake, reborn as the galaxy's deadliest weapon. The first barrage came. Missiles, beams, plasma fire filled the void. The station trembled. The stars themselves seemed to shake. But the giant stood tall. Its shields roared with light, deflecting the fury. Its body groaned but did not break. The mechanic whispered through clenched teeth. "Now," and the ship answered, cannons fired in unison. Beams of white fire split the dark. Whole squadrons vanished in seconds, their ships torn apart like paper. The armada staggered, their formation broke. They had come to crush a corpse, but they faced a storm, and storms do not bow. The human felt the ship's will surge through him. It was not just fighting, it was alive with rage and pride. Every weapon it unleashed felt like a heartbeat. Every strike shook the heavens, together they moved as one. Man and machine bonded in purpose. The galaxy had never seen such a union. The fleets pushed harder. Thousands of ships swarmed from every direction. Explosions lit the void, turning space into fire. But the warship danced through it all. Engines roared, shields shimmered, weapons sang. Every time the enemy thought they had the upper hand, the giant struck harder. The human shouted, his voice mixing with the ship's roar. "We are not broken. We are not forgotten." Hours felt like seconds. Battles felt like storms, and when the dust began to clear, the truth was written across the stars. The fleets that had come to erase him were shattered. Armadas burned, warlords fled, empires trembled. The human and the giant stood alone, scarred but unbroken, and the galaxy was silent. From distant worlds, whispers rose again. But now they were not whispers of fear, they were whispers of awe. A human had taken what all had rejected. A human had awakened a legend. And together they had defied the galaxy. The mechanic leaned back in the captain's chair, his body weak, his hands trembling. But his eyes burned with fire, he whispered softly. "They will never laugh again." The ship answered with a hum so deep it shook his bones. It was not only a weapon, it was his companion. Together they had faced the stars, and together they had won. The dockyard survivors looked out at the glowing vessel. They knew history had changed before their eyes. The galaxy had rulers, the galaxy had empires, but now, it also had something greater. A legend born of rust and faith. A human who saw life where others saw death. A warship that rose from its grave to become the deadliest blade in the stars. And so the story of the abandoned giant ended. Not as a tale of failure, not as a cursed relic, but as a legend that would never die. For where humanity walks, forgotten things rise. And when humans believe, the galaxy trembles. The final awakening had come, and the stars would never be the same again.